Have you ever wondered about the eerie dream Pontius Pilate's wife experienced, the one mentioned in Matthew 27, and how it ties to Jesus' trial and crucifixion? Picture this: a letter from Pilate's wife, describing her terrifying dream and the events surrounding Jesus, found alongside the Dead Sea Scrolls. This letter, hidden among ancient manuscripts in an Italian library, was addressed to her friend Fulvia Romilia in Italy. Today we're going to explore this mysterious letter and reveal its astonishing contents. Subscribe now to stay updated, because you won't want to miss a single detail. Before we delve into the letter, let me introduce you to the Diaries of Pontius Pilate. This riveting book begins with a murder near the Dead Sea and takes readers on an exhilarating journey. Archaeologists Kevin Elliott and Jill Gates discover 20 copper scrolls that unveil jaw-dropping details about Pilate's investigation into Jesus' death and resurrection. As they send photos of the scrolls for translation, they become entangled in a dangerous conspiracy. This book is a roller coaster of excitement from beginning to end. Tom Lemon warns, don't open this book unless you're in a comfortable chair with good lighting, because you won't want to move, trust me. This is one read you can't afford to miss. Grab your copy today and prepare for an unforgettable adventure. Now, let's dive into the main story: the letter from Claudia Procula, Pontius Pilate's wife, to her friend Fulvia Romilia, read by Elizabeth Peter. You, my faithful friend, are begging me to describe the events that have transpired since we last met. You may have heard some news, but the secrecy surrounding these events may cause you anxiety. I shall honor your request and recount my scattered memories, even if they startle you. Remember that the forces shaping our lives often remain impenetrable to our mortal understanding, and these forces have indeed altered my fate. I won't describe the early days of my life, which passed quietly under my parents' protection. You know that, at 16 I married the Roman Pilate, a descendant of a renowned family and then a governor in Italy. We soon traveled to the province to which he was appointed. Without joy or fear, I followed my much older husband, who could have been my father. I missed you terribly and longed for my parents' quiet haven in Nebron. My early married years were calm and peaceful, blessed with a son who was dearer to me than life itself. My husband Pilate was later appointed procurator of Judea by the emperor's grace. We journeyed to this fertile and rich province, which I grew to love. However, the Hebrews viewed us with pride and contempt, calling us foreigners who profaned their holy land. In Jerusalem, I spent time with my son in serene forests, sewing altar covers and reading Virgil's verses. Pilate often joined us in his few spare moments, burdened by his desire to rule with a strong hand, but finding himself weak in controlling the rebellious, divided people. Only one family in Jerusalem showed us any kindness: the family of Jairus, the synagogue director. His wife Salome and their lovely daughter, Semita, welcomed me warmly. They spoke of the God of their ancestors, and I found solace in their hymns and holy books. One day, Semita fell ill and died in her mother's arms. Deeply distressed, I rushed to their house. The crowd before their home parted to let in a group of men, among them a young man with golden hair and a celestial appearance. This man, whom I later learned was Jesus of Nazareth, radiated beauty and a certain fearsome power. He approached Semita's body, took her hand, and commanded her to rise. To my astonishment, she did. She opened her eyes, called for her mother, and life returned to her pale cheeks. I returned home, overwhelmed by what I had witnessed. At dinner, I recounted the events to Pilate, who solemnly replied, "You saw Jesus of Nazareth, hated by the Pharisees and Sadducees and the Herodian party." Pilate's response highlighted the dangerous political climate and the deep-seated hatred towards Jesus. The Pharisees and Sadducees, along with the Herodian party, despised Jesus, viewing him as a threat to their power. Pilate's acknowledgement of Jesus' significance and the ensuing tension sets the stage for the subsequent events leading to the crucifixion. Claudia's dream, her letter, and the events she witnessed provide a haunting glimpse into the spiritual and political turmoil of that time. They reveal the profound impact Jesus had on those who encountered him, even those in positions of power. This story, filled with divine interventions and human struggles, underscores the extraordinary nature of Jesus' life and the dramatic events leading to his crucifixion. Stay tuned as we uncover more about Claudia's dream, Pilate's struggles, and the miraculous events that continue to captivate our imaginations. Subscribe and join us in exploring these hidden truths and their implications on our understanding of history and faith. The political climate in Jerusalem was highly charged during the time of Jesus. The Roman occupation was resented by the Jewish population, and any potential threat to the fragile peace was met with severe measures. Jesus of Nazareth, with his growing following and radical teachings, was seen as a significant threat by the religious leaders and the Roman authorities. Pilate, as the Roman governor, was caught in a precarious position. He had to maintain order and appease the local leaders while ensuring that any actions taken were in line with Roman law and did not provoke the emperor's wrath. This delicate balancing act is evident in his handling of Jesus' trial. The Gospels describe how Pilate struggled with the decision to crucify Jesus. He found no fault in him and was warned by his wife, Claudia, about her troubling dream. Despite his reservations and the clear injustice, Pilate ultimately succumbed to the pressure from the Jewish leaders and the crowd, ordering Jesus' crucifixion to avoid a potential uprising. Claudia's dream was more than a mere nightmare, it was a divine warning. In her letter, she details the vivid and unsettling images she saw images of Jesus suffering, being mocked and crucified. She awoke with a sense of foreboding, urging Pilate to have nothing to do with this righteous man. The day of the crucifixion was filled with ominous signs. Darkness covered the land from noon until 3 in the afternoon. The temple veil was torn in two. The earth shook, rocks split, and tombs broke open. These events were not just natural occurrences, they were cosmic signs marking the significance of what was happening. The Son of God was being crucified, and all creation responded. Jesus' resurrection 3 days later was the ultimate validation of his divinity. The empty tomb, the appearances to his disciples, and the transformation of his followers, who were once fearful and disheartened into bold proclaimers of the gospel, were undeniable testimonies to his victory over death. Claudia's dream is a powerful reminder of how God communicates warnings and guidance through dreams and visions. Throughout the Bible, God used dreams to reveal his plans and to protect his people. Joseph, Daniel, and others received divine messages that directed their actions and influenced the course of history. Claudia's dream stands out because it came to a Roman woman, the wife of the governor who presided over Jesus' trial. This underscores the universality of God's message and his desire to reach all people, regardless of their background or status. In her letter, Claudia describes her dream with haunting detail. She saw Jesus standing trial, being scourged, and carrying his cross. She witnessed the agony and the injustice of his crucifixion. Her dream left her with a profound sense of sorrow and urgency, compelling her to warn Pilate. Despite her warning, the political and social pressures were too great for Pilate to heed her advice fully. Yet, Claudia's dream and her subsequent letter provide a unique perspective on the events of that time, highlighting the spiritual dimensions at play. The trial and crucifixion of Jesus were not just legal and political events, they were deeply spiritual. The religious leaders saw Jesus as a blasphemer and a threat to their authority. They manipulated the political system to achieve their goal of silencing him, but in doing so, they unwittingly fulfilled God's redemptive plan. Pilate, though a Roman governor, was drawn into this spiritual conflict. His interactions with Jesus left him deeply troubled. Jesus' calm demeanor, his claims of kingship, and his assertion of a kingdom not of this world perplexed Pilate. The governor's attempts to placate the crowd by offering to release Jesus or Barabbas only highlighted his inner turmoil. The crucifixion was a collision of earthly and divine powers. The religious leaders, the Roman authorities, and the forces of darkness conspired to destroy Jesus. Yet through his death and resurrection, Jesus triumphed over sin, death, and Satan. Claudia's letter, preserved through the centuries, offers a rare glimpse into the personal and spiritual impact of Jesus' crucifixion on those who witnessed it. Her account, filled with emotion and reverence, adds depth to our understanding of the events and their significance. This letter is a testament to the far-reaching effects of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. It touched not only his immediate followers, but also those on the periphery, like Claudia and Pilate. Their stories remind us that the message of Jesus is universal and transformative. As we reflect on Claudia's dream and her perspective, we are invited to see the crucifixion and resurrection anew. Her experience challenges us to consider the profound spiritual truths at the heart of the gospel and the impact they continue to have on our lives today. Claudia Procula's dream, her letter, and the events she witnessed provide a haunting glimpse into the spiritual and political turmoil of that time. They reveal the profound impact Jesus had on those who encountered him, even those in positions of power. This story, filled with divine interventions and human struggles, underscores the extraordinary nature of Jesus' life and the dramatic events leading to his crucifixion. Stay tuned as we uncover more about Claudia's dream, Pilate's struggles, and the miraculous events that continue to captivate our imaginations. Subscribe and join us in exploring these hidden truths and their implications on our understanding of history and faith. This hatred is increasing every day, and their only thought is how to bring him to death. But the Nazarene's words are the words of a wise man, and his miracles are really of God. But why do they hate him so strongly, I asked? Because he shows their morals and hypocrisy. I once heard him saying to the Pharisees, "Whited sepulchres, breed of vipers, you impose heavy burdens upon your brethren, but you do not lift a finger for them. You pay the tithe with mint and cinnamon, but you are not interested in abiding by the laws in faithful righteousness and mercy." The meaning of these words is deep and true. He offended these proud and pompous people, and the outlook for the Nazarene's future is very dark. "But you will protect him, isn't that so?" I exclaimed, highly indignant. "My power is too weak to oppose these rebellious and wretched people. On the other hand, I would be deeply concerned should I become forced to spill the blood of this wise man." After these words, Pontius rose and went into another room deep in thought. I, however, remained in indescribable sorrow and sadness. The day of the Passover approached. On this great, and for the Hebrews so very important, a holy day, a great many people from all parts of Judea gathered in Jerusalem to solemnly carry the victims of the feast to the temple. The procession generally took place on Thursday. Before his holiday, Pontius told me that the Nazarene's future was extremely insecure. A conspiracy was brewing over his head, and it might be that this evening he would be delivered into the hands of the high priest. I trembled when I heard these words, and I asked my husband, "You will protect him, won't you?" "Can I?" replied Pontius, with a mournful expression in his face. "The late, of which Plato spoke, and which he predicted would befall righteous men, will, it seems, reach also to Jesus. He will be persecuted, contemptuously treated, and delivered to a cruel death." The time came to retire, but when I laid my head on the pillow to find sleep, a mysterious force suddenly took possession of my mind. I saw Jesus appearing as she had described their God. His face shone in majesty like the sun. He flew on cherub wings, and a fiery flame executed his orders, and he stopped on a cloud. It appeared that he was ready to judge the people assembled before him. With one gesture, he separated the righteous from the wicked. The first, the righteous, were raised by him to the great eternity of divine salvation, but the second, the wicked, were thrown in a fiery sea, in comparison with which the fires of Erebus and Phlegethon are nothing. When this heavenly judgment took place and attracted the attention of the people, he showed them his wounds with which his body was covered, and said with a terrible voice, "Give me back my blood, which I spilled for you." Then those unhappy men asked the rocks and the mountains of the earth to swallow and to cover them. In vain they formerly felt secure from suffering, and in vain they protected themselves with the eternal and insurmountable illusion. They perished. What a dream, or better, what a revelation. When the dawn came and lit the roofs of the temple, I arose with a heart full of fear from what I had seen, and to calm myself, I sat near the window. But it seemed to me that in the center of the town, sounds of shouting became audible. Imprecations grew louder and louder, and this noise reached my ear like the roar of the waves of the sea. I was listening to this unintermitted uproar, and my heart began to beat terribly, and cold sweat streamed down my forehead. Soon the noise came nearer and nearer, and the stairs that led up to the law courts were beset with an innumerable crowd. In deep apprehension of what might unexpectedly happen, I took my son by the hand, put a thin coat on him, and ran to my husband. When we reached the inner door leading to the court hall, I heard a noise of louder voices. I had no courage to step in, but peeped through the purple curtains. What a spectacle, Fulvia! Pontius sat on his ivory throne in all the majesty with which Rome adorns her representatives, and apparently showed no fear, as if it were his intention to appear thus and to bear an intrepid expression on his face. But I could quickly understand and catch his concern. With bound hands and clothes torn by blows he had suffered, and with a blood-covered forehead, Jesus of Nazareth, calm and undisturbed, stood before him. No signs of bitterness or fear were noticeable on his face. He was quiet like an innocent and peaceful like a lamb. His peacefulness struck me with terror, for in my ears still sounded the words I had heard in my dream, "Give me back my blood, which I have spilled for you." Around him stood the enraged and excited crowd that had brought him before the tribunal. The crowds of people were joined by guards and servants, Levites and Pharisees, whose eyes flamed with anger. The latter were distinguished by parchment rolls containing various texts of the laws, which they had bound to their heads. All these people burned from anger and envy, and it appeared to me that in their faces an infernal fire was shining, and that by the spirit of Nina these voices had been mixed with the howling of hunted animals. At last, after a sign given by my husband, silence was restored. "What is your request?" he asked. "We demand the death of this man, Jesus of Nazareth," one of the priests answered in the name of all the people. "Herod sends him to you so that you may pass judgment. What do you accuse him of? Of what does the gravity of his offense consist?" Thereafter, the echo of their fury was again to be heard. He predicted the destruction of the temple. He exalts himself to the rank of the King of the Jews, to Christ, to the Son of God. He offended the priests of Abraham's seed, shouted the Levites. "He shall be crucified," cried the angry crowd. The echo of these vociferations is still in my ears, and the figure of the innocent victim will always stay before my eyes. Then Pilate turned to Jesus and, with an altered voice, asked him, "Are you King of the Jews?" "You say so," answered Jesus. "Are you Christ, the Son of God?" Pilate asked again, but Jesus did not answer. The shouting began again, even louder, and their voices were like the howling of wild, hungry animals. "Deliver him to us, so that he may die on the cross." Pontius again ordered them to be silent and said to them, "I find no guilt in this man, and I will acquit him. Deliver him to us, I crucify him." Else sounded the furious voices of the people. I could stand this, shouting no longer. So I beckoned one of my servants and sent him to my husband to ask him to come to me for a few moments. Pontius at once left the court hall and came to me. I threw myself at his feet and said, "For the sake of all that is dear to you, and for this child's sake, the token of our holy matrimonial bond, do not make yourself guilty by spilling the blood of this righteous man who is so like the immortal God. I saw him in my dream last night. He was surrounded with divine majesty. He judged mankind who trembled before him, and among those unhappy ones who had been thrown into the fire of hell, I noticed the faces of those who exacted his death. Take care, and do not raise your profane hand against him. Oh, believe me, a single drop of this blood may be your damnation for all eternity. All that is happening now frightens me also," answered Pontius. "But what can I do? The number of the Roman guards is extremely small, and their protection force is very weak for these demoniac people. Mishap is after us, for they do not seek right but revenge from the courts. Be quiet, Claudia. Go with the child in the garden. Your eyes are not made to watch such a frightful spectacle." After these words, he went out and left me alone. And I shed bitter tears in my hopelessness, and pity Jesus was still the object of all the banter and beating in the courts on the part of the crowd and of rough soldiers. Their passions were even more inflamed in view of his unlimited patience. In horror, Pontius returned to his throne. When the throng saw him again, they immediately started to shout their brutal demand and put him to death. Following an old custom, the governor used to set free on Easter Day a criminal sentenced to death, thus showing an example of mercy and grace. To decide this divine procedure, he always referred to the people. Pontius saw in this custom a way to liberate Jesus and, in a loud voice, asked the crowd, "Whom do you want me to release on this holiday? Barabbas or Jesus called Christ? Set Barabbas free," shouted the crowd. In fact, Barabbas was a robber and murderer, notorious in all the surrounding districts for the crimes he had committed. Pontius asked again, "And what shall I do with Jesus of Nazareth?" "Crucify him," they cried. "And what evil did he do?" With ever-increasing fury they howled, "He shall be crucified." In a desperate mood, Pilate bowed his head. The insolence of the crowd grew with every moment. Pilate was afraid that his authority and the Roman power, which he so strongly defended, might be compromised by this menace. In Jerusalem, he had no defense force other than his bodyguard, and in addition, a small number of local troops who had taken the oath of allegiance to the Roman eagle. All right, I think we will have to catch a break here so that the video will not be too long. As I asked earlier, you can subscribe now to get an update when we upload part 2 of the video. Regarding the book one spoke of earlier, I will also share the link in the description and pin as the first comment too. You can go get one and check it out. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.